Welcome everyone for another edition of FinTech Talk Show. I'm your host, Patty Ramanathan from the iValley Innovation Center in San Francisco Bay Area. For those who are new here, iValley is a third-generation startup factory in the Bay Area, and we host these FinTech Talks to talk about the future we're building with our partners and startups. We've had great engagement with these sessions on Clubhouse, with topics ranging from the future of crypto economy to embedded finance to the future of wealth management and what's different about Web 3.0 and the design principles for Web 3.0. And even we had a show on future media and events. All recaps and some of the recordings are on our Substack, so do check it out if you haven't already checked it out. The URL is fintechtalk.substack.com. We'll have this recording posted there, also with our very popular FinTech Elder recaps. The most recent one is that Web 3.0 spiders, a term that this show has coined for the next trillion-dollar market cap companies or networks. We'll be talking about them today. Today's session is about understanding the emerging trend of startups in FinTech and Web 3.0 migrating away from the Silicon Valley and New York to places like Austin, South Florida, and other locales, and the formation of startup hubs in those places. We'll talk about that and also get into whether the Web 3.0 spiders that we just mentioned will be born in Austin and other hubs outside of San Francisco Bay Area and New York. As I mentioned, Web 3.0 spider is a new term coined by the show, kind of like following on the unicorn. Unicorn's $1 billion in valuation, so the Web 3.0 spider represents kind of future dominant players like the FANG, like the Facebook, Apple network, Netflix, Google acronym. Some people include Tesla in it, and Tesla and others are in Austin already or have moved, so to speak. But we talk about spiders in the context of Web 3.0. Well, you'll see exactly what this means in a few minutes. Let me start with a great quote from President John F. Kennedy. Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. And without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome two very distinguished fintech stars, operators, bankers, and innovators operating very creatively at opposite ends of the spectrum. And they're not in the Silicon Valley, and they embody bold change, as you will soon learn. Welcome Alan Rayson, Chief Innovation Officer, also Chief Technology Officer, and Austin Regional Banking President at Encore Bank. Welcome, Alan.
Patty, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Great. And Eugene Marinelli, formerly co-founder at Blend, now founder, investor, advisor to startups, recently moved to Austin. We'll hear about that. Welcome, Eugene. Welcome both. Let's have some fun. Let's do a quick round of introductions and opening remarks. Talk about how you got here, what you're focusing on now, kind of career-wise, geography-wise. Maybe start with Eugene first. I think Eugene, you're still on mute. Okay, Alan, you want to go? I think Eugene's having.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Eugene. You're
sorry.
breaking.
Just by way of introduction. I was one of the co-founders of Blend, which is a startup that now powers over 30% of mortgages in the U.S. Prior to that, I was an engineer and kind of like found this problem of mortgages and just decided, with my co-founders to take it on as its own company. And so, excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Great, welcome, Alan. Opening.
Patty, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I am in Austin, Texas, which I'm proud to say that. I had not heard of the earthquake in the Bay Area, so hopefully everyone is okay. That was new news.
It was a small one. I think everyone's okay. I mean, we're all okay.
That's great to hear. We deal with a lot here in Texas, but it's mostly mostly heat. Fortunately, no earthquakes, but I do hope everyone is okay. My name is Alan Rayson. I'm proud to be responsible for technology and innovation for Encore Bank. We're a digital bank across the broader southeastern part of the United States, and relatively new. I wouldn't call us a startup necessarily anymore, but we're certainly early stage, about 2 years in, and among the fastest growing banks in the country, if not the fastest, which is a bit of our claim to fame right now.
Welcome, Alan. And our main topic is to talk about Austin and the southeastern and other hubs. So this is a piece from TechCrunch that I pulled up, and I quote from TechCrunch: Austin has made headlines over the past year for a number of reasons. It's home to Oracle's new headquarters. Tesla is building a massive gigafactory in the Texas capital, and people, mostly tech workers, are leaving the Bay Area, home to where I live, in droves to settle in the city, driving up home prices in the process. It's just not tech workers now. A number of venture capitalists have set up shop in Austin, including Jim Breyer, Breyer Capital, and Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale. I think, Eugene, you worked with Joe, I believe, who said last year he was moving his venture capital firm 8VC from Silicon Valley to the city. The latest VC to call Austin home is Jeff Lewis as well, of Bedrock, for 4-year-old billion-dollar asset. So a lot of folks moving. Um, so Eugene, you have moved recently. Have written about in similar vein on some of the advantages that Austin presents over areas like Bay Area, but not just Bay Area, but other areas in the United States. Um, I read your blog. I read your article, mostly economic and practical lifestyle reasons triggered actually by COVID, because you could work from anywhere. Anywhere. Tell us a little bit more about your decision. How has it been since your move, Eugene?
Sure. Yeah, and if anyone wants to check that out, it's on my website. But yeah, basically moved here about a year ago, a little over a year. I had been looking even before COVID, and I was in San Francisco for almost 10 years, and I was just kind of seeing, I don't want to be I don't want to offend anyone, but kind of just seeing the city fall apart, and just just not really seeing any hope for San Francisco to get better. And yeah, I think COVID for a lot of people triggered, like, suddenly we had this indefinite time period where we didn't have to be in an office, and we kind of had the freedom to like recalibrate and reorient and go somewhere that was more aligned with our like values, and that seemed like it had a better future. And yeah, and Austin seemed like the best place where it is in a state with different politics, and while Austin's politics are pretty similar to San Francisco's in some ways, the state is not. And you know that was a big reason, I think, is just, I guess, as an investor, I'm like, I think if people like myself and Joe Lonsdale are kind of independently coming to the conclusion this is where we want to be and do business, then, like, investing in this location is going to be huge. And so just like the real estate that I bought has performed really well as well. So yeah, but overall it's been great. I would say, like, there hasn't exactly been like a flood of every startup moving their HQ here, but obviously, for that has been the case for big companies, and a handful of like startups that are like-minded have started out here. So yeah.
No, great, good timing there, Eugene. Obviously, meaning I did see that real estate's kind of going up 10-20% every year, so good timing there. But Alan, isn't there more? Meaning, is Austin not only kind of a great place for all the reasons Eugene stated, but also starting to become a vibrant tech and startup hub? And you've been there 8 years. Is something big going on now?
I think it is, and it's been going for a little while, to be honest. Certainly pre-COVID, and to your point, I lived in Dallas for about 15 years, but moved to Austin in 2013. So I've been here 8 years or so. I do feel like an elder statesman around here, given uh, how many people have moved here recently. But It really is. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I mean, a lot of us move here because, not only for the business opportunities, fintech and otherwise, but um, the lifestyle aspects of Austin are very attractive as well. I mean, the ability to be outdoors on the trails, on the lakes, on the water, um, you know, relatively mild winters, all of that. There, to your point, there's a lot in play that is attracting people from Chicago, West Coast, Northeast to Austin. I know we're going to talk a lot about that today.
So you brought up the lifestyle point, and Eugene kind of talked about it kind of broadly in politics and stuff. And Eugene, you should give out your website link where your blog is there because we're referring to it. I think it's your full name.com, but I'll let you give that out. But in that, I was struck by that video of you firing from a tank. Uh, Something I suppose you can only do in Texas.
Indeed.
You're obviously having a great time, but I'm wondering if you experience a twin sometime. What do you think Silicon Valley, if you could do, what are some of the things Silicon Valley could have? And talk a little bit about that cultural aspect too that Alan alluded to, right? So lifestyle, Texas is offers a different lifestyle. So talk a little bit about what attracted. Eugene, you want to go first? Go ahead, Alan.
Patty, I'm happy to take that. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to it. I have a family, have three teenage boys at this point, and wanted to raise them in a place that was um, welcoming, diverse, pretty open minded. Not that other places in the country and other places in Texas aren't that, but that is very much Austin's vibe. I mean, it still has a very small town feel to it, even though there's I think 2.1, 2.2 million people in the MSA. It's nowhere clear. It's nowhere near what DFW is, for example, with 10 million people. I mean, it's a fifth of the size of DFW, probably a fifth of the size of Houston, and just has that small town vibe. Um, people. Like I said, you can be outdoors, um, on the lakes, and just really have a good balance. People do work hard here for sure, but really have just a great balance. From a work life perspective.
Got it. And looks like Eugene had a drop. I think he's having some signal issue. Let's see if he can come back. But where do you think, Alan, you're seeing the migration happening? Meaning, are you getting to know some of these fresh immigrants into Austin from, obviously Eugene is from the Bay Area, but where do you see this happening?
Yeah, I mean, we see it from a lot of different places, not just here in the States, but from Europe as well. I mean, it definitely has the small town vibe, which I alluded to, but it has a bit of an international flair as well. And the one thing that I would say about Austin, I grew up in a military family, so I moved all over the world and have really seen a number of different places from the East Coast and here in the States to Japan, places like that. But the one thing that I would say about Austin is, on the whole, everyone is really interested in helping each other, and that makes it I wouldn't say easy, but a relatively easy place to plug into. From a personal perspective, from a business perspective, because truly people will help you get connected. People will make introductions for you. Um, once they kind of understand who you need to connect with and who would help you. That's very much a big part of the fabric and kind of DNA of Austin is, people tend to help each other out. And that makes it a relatively easy place to plug into from a business perspective or otherwise.
Yeah, so it looks like a great place to raise a family. And Eugene, I think you're back.
Yeah, sorry, I should be good now. So,
Okay, no worries.
I should be good.
So we were talking about the lifestyle when I think you had the technical glitch, and we talked about the tank and your blog. So why don't you tell some of the lifestyle aspects that's attractive for you?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about that a bit. Um, I think just as a disclaimer, I'd say that, you know, lifestyle, I don't think it's always the best thing to optimize on in terms of like your location. I think, just opportunities tend to be the more important thing. But, I think things that I was worried about when I moved here have not really turned out to be problems. So like the weather, I would say actually is amazing. And, it's, if you like warm weather at all, it's just like the perfect place to be. It's like very sunny and so on. But yeah, other than that, it's like, the fun things are, barbecue and, just like nature. I think people kind of don't realize that the hill country of Texas is such a gorgeous setting. Definitely on par or better than like Napa. And yeah, it's just very spacious. Like you never feel like you're sort of in a crowded place. And yeah, like great food. A lot of nice people. So yeah, lots of things like that.
And ability to shoot tanks. You want to give out that website of yours where
Oh
you have
yeah, yeah.
that video?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's this place called oxranch.com, which is it's a little bit. It's not really close to Austin, but yeah, you can shoot guns here. Yeah, like you can if you have a plot of land like at least 10 or 20 acres. There should be plenty of space to like shoot a gun, and if you're into guns, you can easily pick one up at a gun show. Or, it's you just have to show your ID, so it's very different from California in
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. And the website, it's your full name,
Oh yeah. Sorry,
eugenemarinotti.com, right?
EugeneMarinelli.com. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so you can so audience who wants to check out Eugene shooting a tank, not a gun. I mean, gun's a big deal, but shooting a tank's a bigger deal. I think he has a video on the blog, and he talks about some of the things he's referenced. Clubhouse telling me my signal is bad. You guys can hear me okay
Yeah.
when I'm talking?
We can
Okay.
hear you great.
Okay, so let's pivot from lifestyle to like startups, right? So if someone's planning to move there, I think a lot of our network or some in our network are thinking about it. Some have. So if they're a startup founder, early stage, so what can how can they connect into the ecosystem? What can they expect? I mean, yeah, I get the low cost and access and things, but in hiring and other things, what can they expect for somebody who's planning to move in?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm happy to take that one.
Sure.
Having been around here for a little while, I can honestly say that of the components of the ecosystem when I moved here in 2013 weren't completely put together. And what I mean by that is, we do have a major university here in University of Texas at Austin. Um, we had a very entrepreneurial ecosystem at the time, 7 or 8 years. But what we were missing was the capital and to some extent the talent. And those two things, I think, are what has those two gaps, so to speak, have really been filled over the last 5 to 10 years. For over the last 5 to 10 years, I guess probably best example is um, my I spent about 2/3 of my career in corporate banking, and then about a third of my career in fintech and software development technology. And having launched a company here in Austin, I found that it was relatively easy to put this was several years ago, but relatively easy to put a seed round together. But you had to go outside of Austin to get an A or beyond. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. I've really found that the capital community, along with many others, the capital community has been attracted to Austin as well, which only helps to round out the ecosystem. And then I think the talent that exists here as well, not only in Austin but in Texas in general. But I think the talent gap has been filled to some extent as well, validated by the fact that Apple has got building a huge campus here. Tesla just announced their HQ move to Austin. Oracle, obviously. So those types of companies that require that type of talent don't move here if they can't find the talent. So I think their moves here have sort of validated that remaining piece or that remaining gap has been filled over the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, interesting. Go ahead, Eugene. You were trying to get in.
I was going to say, I haven't, admittedly, I have not started a company here yet, but and my past was basically, spending 10 years grinding to hire a team in San Francisco, which is a very difficult undertaking. But I would say anecdotally, I know a lot of people who are, especially who are, entering their 30s and are kind of having kids and are married and so on, are much more attracted to Austin than almost anywhere else. And so one of the common problems at Blend was like hiring people that had some experience. And I suspect that if I were to try to put together a team here, it would be maybe I wouldn't necessarily have to hire people that are already here, but I could probably make the case that if you're someone with a family, then it's going to be a great place for you. Like your kids can go to school without like wearing masks and getting sanitized 5 times a day, and you're you can eat at restaurants without like a QR code and stuff like that, where a lot of people just a lot of people agree with that, but a lot of people just are just tired of that stuff and want to go somewhere like normal.
Yeah, no, true. And how do you contrast? So outside of that, kind of the social aspects and obviously post COVID and the politics aspect, but Alan talked about the UT and some of these big companies moving, so they've done some research, obviously. And I go back to kind of using a microcosm example. So when Silicon Valley was down the peninsula, so to speak, and then Google and others started the buses. So all the young Googlers, if you will, or the folks who were going to do startups, I should say, migrated to San Francisco because they could just bus in. But then the startup epicenter moved to there as well, and that busing was one of the reasons, because there were a lot of people there and they wanted to just set up the companies there. So there was a lag; it didn't happen instantaneously. So do you see that kind of happening? I mean, obviously, if Apple, Tesla, and folks leave from there, start their own company, so you're seeing a lot of kind of movement in that direction. You see a lot of startups being founded in.
I personally, my network is more around people that have moved here and Twitter, and so I don't know if I'm the most qualified to talk about the bigger company networks, but yeah, I mean, I certainly believe that will happen. I do think there's a common argument against Austin is like that it is such a nice place to live that people go there for lifestyle and not for career. And so the more ambitious people will stay in San Francisco, New York. But I think that's, I mean, just looking at like, some people that you would think of like as synonymous with ambition, like Elon Musk, like literally lives in Austin. So, or at least is a resident here. So, you can't, I don't know if that argument's going to hold up in like, in the coming years.
Sure.
Eugene, you're not wrong though. That used to be the the word on Austin, is that the level of work output was not that high. And Patty, just to anecdotally, Austin used to be a place where the hippies would come, and bring refreshments with them. But not that there's still that aspect of the lifestyle which we've talked about, but it certainly has changed over the last 5 to 10 years, to Eugene's point, with regard to the level of ambition, along with the lifestyle has really taken shape over the last few years.
Yeah, and you on the same vein, Alan. You you deal with fintech. Eugene does too, but there are companies like Q2 and Coney and others who were kind of grew up in Austin. So do you see some early stage fintech activity, startup activity?
I do. I think it's early days, but you know, having never lived in the Bay Area, it's hard for me to comment. But my observation was that way back when there were new companies that were starting, it took some time for those companies to grow and ultimately for those founders to realize an exit, significant exit in a lot of ways. And I think that's what we're starting to see here in Austin. Um, we've had some companies grow up to be big, and have had some big exits over the last 5 to 10 years. You know, and when those things start to happen, to the extent that that capital gets redeployed back into that local market to to seed other entrepreneurs, then it really starts to get rolling. And I think that's what we've experienced here as companies like a Coney um, have sold, and other big exits have materialized. That capital gets sort of redeployed back into the ecosystem, and we kind of have what we're experiencing here in Austin today.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about that capital. Maybe ask Eugene about this. You're doing some angel investments and also kind of connected into the venture capital ecosystem. But let me tell you a stat here that I noticed on Twitter. Right, so not regarding capital, but restaurant reservations and Open Table. And I don't know whether it's legit. I'm just reading off a tweet. So Vegas, this is kind of weekend compared to the same weekend 2 years ago, not the COVID year, but 2 years ago. So Vegas restaurant reservation was up 39%, Miami 27, Austin 26, Tampa 18. Whereas New York City was minus 32, San Francisco was minus 37, Honolulu minus 38, and Brooklyn minus 44. So again, I don't know what the right numbers, but that's a pattern. And I don't want to talk about restaurant reservation, but I want to talk about inflow of LP capital and capital money, like the redeployment of capital. So Eugene, can you comment based on kind of your limited time there? How do you see the venture capital space and limited partner capital coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to reiterate, I got there have been big funds like 8VC and Bedrock relocating here, and for investments of the size they make, like they're going to want to meet you in person usually, I think. And so actually you have a lot more entrepreneurs, even if they're not starting here, like they're spending time here with investors. And so I've a few of the companies I invested in recently. One of them like was in Berkeley or somewhere in Bay Area, and they came here to visit with one of those investors, and they're like, oh hey, like we should meet up too for lunch, and so we met that way, and that's how the deal happened. And then they actually ended up moving here, and which makes sense. I mean, it's like you want to be around your investors, especially your lead investors. So being able to meet with them is pretty important. And then yeah, I mean, there's also been companies where they raise here, but they kind of go back to New York or whatever, and but they're still like popping in every few months, and so it's a lot. There's actually a lot more, ironically, more travel now, I'd say, from what I can tell. Like people are flying around to LA, New York, Miami, Austin on a more regular basis to meet with different people, and I think people have kind of reorganized around shared values in these different places, and so you kind of get to pop in and kind of like experience the network in each place.
Yeah, no, definitely a good location, right? Meaning one of the things I don't like about the West Coast and the East Coast is it takes a while to get to the other side. So Austin and some other places have that advantage that you can
Yeah,
get to
three
get to
hours
sites.
to anywhere pretty much.
Yeah, and Florida is coming up in a big way. We asked for a Florida representative in this call, but the timing didn't work for them. But the mayor, he's actually in the Bay Area promoting Miami, Fran Suarez. So they are big advocates. They want to make Florida like Crypto Valley, and they're doing payroll and Bitcoin and things like that. So they're kind of doing what, say, Silicon Valley historically has had the brand about, right? Trying new things first. So we'll see how it goes. But I want to stay in Texas. So among the things unique in the Lone Star State is the fact that it has its own power grid. And Alan, you told me about this. But tell us how that makes a difference, and also now that Bitcoin mining is forefront with China being out, and the awareness around the energy cost for that. Um, are you seeing some activity in that in Texas, or what are the unique advantages for that Texas having its own grid?
Yeah, I'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. How about that? It's an interesting time to be talking about this topic. Primarily because of Snowvid that happened in February of last year, where multiple days of freezing temperatures, pretty much shut the power grid down here in Texas, which was an interesting 3 or 4 days. But historically, Texas has had an advantage from the standpoint that we're energy independent. We're not on the eastern power grid. We're not on the western power grid. Texas is independent from a power perspective. Obviously blessing and a curse in some regards, but that, along with the fact that we don't have state tax here in Texas, the energy savings that a company could realize by moving to Texas historically have been significant. So, to the extent that you're a big power user, if you're running data centers, or to your point, you know, mining, crypto mining requires a lot of power. If you're running big centers like that, you're highly likely going to realize significant, energy savings because of the fact that Texas is independent from a power perspective. So a lot of people don't know that, and it was an interesting conversation that you and I had around that topic. Most people think that it is just from an economic perspective, it is just the fact that Texas doesn't have state tax is the big driver, but it's that plus things like the energy independence that Texas enjoys. So it's an interesting dynamic. I'm glad we weren't having this conversation in February of last year, because I would have had a different opinion. But
No, interesting, and obviously that would have helped them kind of do some backup planning and things. But
yeah,
that's great. Um, so, folks, we're talking. I want to quickly do a room reset. You're listening to the FinTech Talk Show. I'm your host, Patty Ramanathan. We're talking to Alan Rayson, Chief Innovation Officer at Encore Bank in Austin, Texas, and Eugene Marinelli, formerly co-founder of Blend, and now angel investor, and recently moved to Austin, Texas. For summary of our shows, there's a Substack which has a recording. This show's being recorded as well, and that URL is fintechtalk.substack.com. We have an upcoming Web 3.0 report only for subscribers, but do follow us. Follow the speakers, follow our club here, FinTech Talk, and also on social media. I use my name on Twitter and LinkedIn. I do want to open it up for questions too. Since we're recording, I need kind of your written permission. You can back channel me, a little kind of the messaging thing on Clubhouse, saying that it's okay to record your voice. If you want to come upstage, just raise your hand and we'll bring you up if you like. It's a little bit of an intimate audience today, but it's good. We can have some good conversation. I want to shift from talking about Texas and Austin, a little bit about your careers, Alan, Eugene, and also your current focus. Maybe Eugene, go to you first. You co-founded Blend, which is now worth, I think, more than $3 billion. Was one of the leaders who identified the company identified the friction in the mortgage workflow. So, I want to ask you kind of more of a meta question, a little bit about that journey. How did you and your co-founders identify that, and kind of fast forwarded to now? Where do you see, especially in the fintech realm, which workflows are very inefficient and could use some disruption and innovation?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I started out my career at Palantir as a software engineer, and the interesting thing about Palantir is that you get exposed to all sorts of different problem domains. And so we actually ended up spending some time with banks, just seeing, not really working on their workflows exactly, but just learning about their the internals and just seeing how broken everything was with the use of faxes and just like PDF forms and call centers and so on, all these kind of old technologies. And intuitively, we were just, and this was in 2011 or so, we just intuitively knew that the software could be better. We actually hadn't gotten a mortgage ourselves at that point because we were all kind of like under 25 at the time. But as we hired more people there and talked to more people, we just learned that the process for an applicant for a mortgage was like so bad and painful, and still is largely, for most mortgages, pretty painful if they don't use Blend. So yeah, so left Palantir and started that company, and I think even today there are all these things that are done over still done over email and PDF and phone call and so on that just are begging for software, and it just is a lot of low hanging fruit. And so that's some of the stuff that I've been investing in, especially people coming out of Blend who have kind of seen how to create a company like Blend and then can kind of like replicate that for other domains.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about that. Meaning, I know you're doing some angel investments, and whatever you can talk about. What are some of the areas? I mean, I think I like the part that you said that the Palantir discipline. You didn't say this, but kind of more of data analysis based, kind of problem solving was what maybe created Blend. But I'm curious as to what areas you're focusing on your angel investment portfolio, because those would be maybe the next big fintechs.
Yeah. Well, I'd say I'm generally more interested in the founder than the idea. So I tend to invest in all sorts of different things, but in the area of fintech and things along the lines of Blend, one of my earlier investments was a company called Compound, which essentially maps out the process of managing your equity if you're an employee of a tech startup. So helping you develop a plan for exercising your options and figuring out like a liquidity timeline and then offering other services around that in a much more like modern way. And then another example would be an investment made around the same time was called Neo.tax, which there's this like well, essentially I saw that at Blend, our finance team was spending all this time kind of like putting together information about what people were doing in the company, and there was this huge manual process involved in like filing our taxes, and NeoTax was basically automating that whole process with AI, starting with the just claiming I want to say the payroll tax credit for startups. So things like that I think are pretty like, as long as you can find like a talented founder and a clear cut place where there's just like all this manual friction, it's easy to see how that can be 10 times better.
Wonderful. And I want to ask you about Web 3.0 and crypto and things like that, but maybe go to Alan first. And in the same way now, and you are responsible in some ways at Encore Bank to kind of develop those partnerships with fintech. I think we heard from Eugene about his kind of how he looked at setting up Blend or identified the problem. What is your approach when you're kind of looking at expanding Encore's portfolio and partnerships with fintechs?
Yeah, I love the question. I mean, our whole thesis as you and I have talked about, our whole thesis is really built around um, moving three big rocks, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But Encore is a little bit different than most banks because everything we're doing is built around the concept of an exit here in 5, 6, 7 years, and we're just very transparent about that, which is not the norm in banking. But whether it's negotiating contracts or thinking about fintech at Encore, everything is done in the spirit of an exit and in 5 years or so. So I wanted to just put that out there because it informs a lot of what we do. But the way that we think about fintech and tech and innovation in general is we're trying to move three big rocks over the next 5 years to realize a certain outcome, which is an exit. Those three big rocks are driving huge commercial loan volume. Um, Obviously core deposits is the cheapest way to fund those corporate loans. So that second big rock is driving core deposits. So a fintech called Z Suite here in Austin. We go buy their technology off the shelf. Push that product out to our clients and prospects, and it you know and it drives significant commercial escrow deposits for us and brings a great technology solution to title companies, law firms, property managers, people like that. And then the third big rock is driving significant non-interest revenue so that we can hopefully, get into the mid-teens from an ROE perspective, which is significantly higher than the banking industry in general. So our thesis is built around using tech and fintech specifically to move those three big rocks to drive the outcome that I mentioned. So very laser focused as to how we think about and utilize use fintech here at Encore.
Great. And Z Suite's Nathan, and he has a long last name. I don't want to butcher it. He's been on our
Baumeister,
show.
yep, great guy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. So great. And in sourcing, looks like you're sourcing from not just Austin but around. Or do you focus in the region, the Southeast? I know Tennessee, Memphis, and other spots are rising fintech hubs. But where do you source these partnerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we Austin tends to do things local, and we're fortunate now because there's a kind of burgeoning fintech ecosystem. So you know companies like Z Suite, InBanks, INBANX, sort of spend management, ARAP type of platform. A company called Risk Scout here in town. Pretty up and coming fintech, doing some pretty unique things in the space. I mean, there's to solve for what we're trying to. There's a lot of options right in our backyard. But having said that, you know, a platform called Derivative Path, which is actually out your way, brings an FI like ours the ability to do some pretty sophisticated things, interest rate derivatives, swaps, foreign exchange capabilities, which all of our commercial clients demand. So yeah, we try to keep it local when we can, but certainly not limited to just Austin or Texas by any stretch.
Yeah, Derivative Pat Pradeep, I know him well. Yeah, I've invited him to the show.
Great company. Yep.
Yeah, he's super busy as well.
Company called
But
Mantle out in the New York area. Another great fintech that we've partnered with.
yeah, and the CFO part was a common thread between what you both answered. So kind of automating the CFO side of our APAR expense management, kind of bucket that into the CFO's and treasurer's office. So likely we're going to see a lot of kind of streamlining of those kind of workflows and processes. So interesting to note. Um, so Eugene, like Web 3.0, so fintech largely was a distribution problem solved, right? You kind of remove the friction, create or solve the distribution challenge. a lot of what crypto, not just the Bitcoin crypto, but stable coins and CBDC and other things that are happening, less in the US, sometimes more overseas, is also changing the factory of financial services. And also, our thesis is that it's not just financial services might get disintermediated or partially disintermediated, but some of the internet technology firms might too, because they are middlemen too. Like Google is a big search middleman. Facebook and other social media are a big social media, like they're kind of just have audience on both sides, so to speak, and advertisement is the main business model. And similar can be said about Uber and Airbnb. Conceivably, a chain-based Uber without the actual central Uber can manage kind of the ride-sharing part, if you will. So, what do you think about that in terms of evolution of the web into that kind of decentralized model, new business models coming up? Do you have
Yeah.
an opinion on that?
Yeah. So yeah, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is, one model that I've seen a couple times and I am optimistic on is essentially creating something like a replacement service for one of these, but in a way where it's decentralized and end-to-end encrypted, and just figuring out all the technical challenge is involved in doing that. And so one company that I that I invested in is called Skiff, and it's essentially like a Google Docs, except all of the data is encrypted end to end, and it can be stored in IPFS frictionlessly, and there's really no way for Skiff, the company, to access the data. And so it goes against, it's kind of like strictly better than the traditional cloud model that Google and other similar, document providers use, Dropbox, Notion, etc. Um, and so I think you'll see companies doing more of that kind of thing, where you have, just, the company itself is not storing any data; it's just sort of making money by charging a subscription for the service. So that, I think that, yeah, definitely interested in companies like that. And I think on the more extreme end, you see a lot of energy going into projects like Urbit, which I don't know if people here are familiar with that, but it's essentially a sort of like a new internet built from the ground up to be like totally decentralized, and it's sort of an early, in a sense, early project in that there's not much you can do with it other than something like chat, like Slack chats that can never be censored. But I think there's going to be a lot more advancement in that area where like it just completely reinvents the internet.
Can you give out those names, both, kind of maybe
Oh yeah,
spell them out? Yeah.
yeah, Skiff, skiff.org, and which is the document platform, and then there's Urbit, Urbit. I'm not sure what the URL is, but it's essentially yeah, look it up. It's a very interesting project.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. I don't know about Urbit either, so I'll definitely look it up. And the dog project is interesting. Can you talk about kind of how it makes money, or is it kind of more just a nonprofit, or it's tokenized and things like that? What is the kind of the business model?
Yeah, I believe I could be wrong about this. So, but I believe it's a subscription. So, it's built for teams. So you're paying like a per person fee monthly. I believe.
Got it. Yeah, wonderful. Alan, you little your thoughts on Web 3.0. From a banking perspective, there's a lot happening in DeFi, decentralized finance, and stuff. I'm sure kind of you're listening in or tuning into that. But your thoughts on some of what was just said.
Yeah, definitely doing more listening, and observing, more than anything right now relative to our business. But decentralized in general is clearly the future of finance. Not only here in the States but globally as well. A couple things that we're watching pretty closely are use cases around blockchain, whereby, in our business for a bank, as I mentioned, that third rock generating non-interest revenue, you're your mortgage business is always going to be a big non-interest revenue driver for you. Your SBA business is always going to be a big non-interest revenue driver for you, because what's happening in those particular businesses is you're taking portfolios of mortgages or, you know, government-backed SBA loans, and you're ultimately selling those portfolios out into the secondary market. But, you know, in today it takes months to package up a bundle of mortgages and get them sold. But, you know, certainly not too long from now, and we're watching closely, but envision the world where, you know, a lot of that takes place on, you know, a decentralized network, and you can trade those portfolios or sell those portfolios in microseconds, what takes months to facilitate today. So for an FI or really any company, when you get to bring revenue, you know, when you get to bring revenue months in advance of when you would ultimately get it otherwise, that, you know, that's a game changer for any business. So those use cases are really, really important to us, and, you know, something that we're watching pretty closely, and finding our spots where it makes sense for our business.
Yeah. So maybe touch a little bit on regulatory, and we're coming at the top of the hour, but how the regulatory regime for all the things you're talking about, including DeFi and including things like the new internet orbit and stuff, how's that shaping up? I know the infrastructure bill that was passed that had a little bit of controversial things around crypto mining, and who were deemed as kind of who had responsibility to issue 1099 and things like that, and some of the folks could take things out. But there seems to be not general consensus, not just party lines, but even maybe geography. I know Wyoming is formally kind of the only state that approves of a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, kind of a new form of corporation, if you will. So they've redefined their state laws that an LLC can be a DAO and things. So what's your perspective? Is there like an advantage in Texas around this? And how do you think the regulatory landscape shaping up on this?
Yeah, it is another example of very early days. In all honesty, you know, I, I'm not sure. Banks or FIs have the advantage, or fintechs have the advantage, but, you know, what I'm seeing today relative to that regulatory topic is, you know, a bank charter is still very, very valuable. You know, the ability to raise deposits, you know, in a very cheap way is, I mean, that's the lifeblood of a company. Capital is the lifeblood of a company. So banks are very important in the landscape, but fintechs are obviously very important in the landscape as well. So I'm seeing more collaboration between fintechs and banks today than I ever have, versus, you know, what you hear in the media is everybody's trying to disrupt each other. But I think there's a lot more collaboration between those two banks and fintechs than there is anything, because fintechs need banks, and conversely, you know, banks need fintechs. Um, that's more what I'm seeing in the space.
Yeah, no, and you made an important point around the bank charter, right? So obviously we've seen a lot of the big fintechs, the Gen 1 fintechs, SoFi, Lending Club, and others
Yep,
kind of acquire bank charters, so to speak.
that's right.
Um, so no, definitely the cost of capital. I mean, the agility initially is important, but then it all boils down when it comes to scale. It comes down to the cost of capital.
Gotta have
Um,
capital. Yep.
so, Eugene, any thoughts on the regulatory? Are you tracking that? Do you see Texas as being advantaged when it comes to some of the regulatory?
Yeah, I wanted to mention before on the previous topic, but just around the mining and energy topic.
Sure.
You're seeing a lot of people that were literally they're moving from China to Texas because China banned Bitcoin, and Texas has the cheapest energy, I guess, or maybe there are some regulatory advantages perhaps, but yeah, I think one thing that I haven't stressed enough is really that like Austin is kind of like the Bitcoin city, like you go to events and like half the people you meet are involved in Bitcoin in one way or another. so there's like empirically some advantages to the Bitcoin stuff.
That's cool. I didn't know. I thought it would be kind of, that's why I teed up that question around the power grid. But seems like, yeah, if China, I mean, there's a lot of mining going on in China, so the Texas might be Texas has a lot of land too to set up these new racks and rigs and data centers. So interesting. We'll see how that goes. If you noted, Brian Brooks, who was kind of the very pro crypto temp OCC or acting OCC chair, now has joined as CEO of Bitfury, one of the big mining companies. And so we'll see some developments there around mining. And then we're coming to the top of the hour. I want you guys to maybe, in closing, take out your crystal ball. We talked a little bit about the future already, but take out your crystal ball, meaning talk about what's the future for Austin. What are some of the 2 or 3 things you expect to happen in maybe 2022? More startups, more venture capital, setting up space, more immigration into Austin, or whatever you think might happen. And also future of Web 3.0 and fintech. What are some of the 2, 3 big things? I know you talked about the Skiff and the Urbit, and Alan, you talked about some of the things. But in summary, what do you think is happening in 2022 and beyond? Who wants to go first?
Happy to take it. I think we both have a unique lens that we look through here in Austin. But you know, as I commented on earlier, the right pieces have really fallen into place for a city like Austin. You know, and other cities in the U.S. as well. But for a city like Austin, you know, being able to have a major university, we have the academic side, you know, very big player in the market. We have capital, though there's always a need for more. That piece is coming together. We have talent. That piece has really come together. And we have, you know, very entrepreneurial ecosystem that will continue to develop out here in Austin. And, you know, that's not just a 2022 thing, but, you know, that really propels the city forward, you know, well into the future.
Eugene?
Cool. Yeah, I'll go ahead. Yeah, I guess I would say there's a virtuous cycle here, where the way I see it is that, and sorry, this would be slightly political, but I kind of see New York and California becoming more and more sort of like totalitarian and just unlivable in various ways, while those people that are kind of disagree with that move here. Austin's kind of like the Schelling point, let's say, of people that feel this way. So you have people move here. It gets better because you vote for certain policies, like you saw with the, you know, Austin actually banned homeless camping, which is something that hasn't been done elsewhere in at least in a while or successfully. You know, you have people coming here who are Bitcoin maximalists or, you know, Bitcoin miners. All these people are coming here with kind of like shared values, and that's going to lead to, you know, positive developments and more capital coming in, and you know, that, and so it'll be driven by improvements here and you know, things getting worse elsewhere. So I think it's simple as that.
Okay, no, great. Well, whether Austin continues to become and mature into a big startup and innovation hub, sort of almost Silicon Valley esque, but different, or whether it was the CFO fintechs that will take shape in 2022, or if it's the decentralized web and the decentralized doc sharing kind of disrupting the internet business, or if there are more Bitcoin mining businesses in Texas, whichever that happens, we'll be covering it and talking about it on the FinTech Talk show. Change and churn create new paradigms for success and intellectual growth. So this is all good, whether it's driven by politics or economics or lifestyle. So this is all good. With that, let me thank Alan and Eugene for sharing their views so generously. Do check out our Substack at fintechtalk.substack.com. All the links that I've used in this talk are in my bio as well. Follow me, follow the FinTech Talk Show on Clubhouse, follow today's speakers, and get in touch and be in the know. Thank you, Alan and Eugene, again.